He told her it was just a charity trip, a chance to understand how the less fortunate lived. But when the car stopped in the slums and the rain poured down, she realized it was all a setup. He threw her suitcase into the mud, looked at his 7-month pregnant wife kneeling and begging, then drove away without a word. She collapsed in the storm, her only reason to survive being the faint heartbeat of the child inside her. Months later, that same woman returned, not as a victim, but as power itself. She stepped out of a limousine holding the files, the proof, and the authority he once stole. In front of the courthouse, before flashing cameras, she spoke the truth he tried to bury. The whole city went silent. This is a story of betrayal, courage, and justice, the kind no amount of money can buy. Stay till the end, and tell us where you're watching from. Rain hammered against the windshield as the black SUV crawled through the narrow road of the slums. Mud splashed onto the tires, and a dozen children ran barefoot to avoid the spray. Inside the car, Clara sat quietly, one hand over her swollen belly, the other clutching a folded ultrasound photo. Her husband, Ethan Cross, tapped the steering wheel impatiently. His eyes, cold and detached, stayed fixed on the dim road ahead. "Why here?" Clara whispered. Her voice trembled. "You said we were going to the hospital." Ethan's mouth curved into a smile that did not reach his eyes. "A change of plan. I thought you should see where your father's money went. Charity, generosity, all that nonsense you keep preaching about." She looked outside. The world was a blur of rusted roofs and flickering lights. The smell of sewage mixed with the heavy scent of rain. It didn't feel like a place for charity. It felt like exile. When the car stopped, Ethan killed the engine and stepped out first. His leather shoes sank slightly into the mud. He turned to her and said, "Get out!" Confused, she opened the door. Rain poured over her shoulders, soaking the pale blue maternity dress she had worn that morning. "Ethan, please. I'm not feeling well. Can we go home?" He walked to the trunk, pulled out her small suitcase, and dropped it into a puddle. "This is your home now," he said flatly. Her eyes widened. "What are you doing?" He leaned closer. She could smell the whiskey on his breath. "You think I don't know what you're playing at? The baby, the tears, the helpless act. You wanted to trap me. But I'm not your savior, Clara. I'm done pretending." She shook her head, water streaming down her face. "That's not true. I never—" "Don't lie to me." His voice rose over the thunder. "I saw the way you looked at me when your father's will was read. You thought owning part of my company would make you untouchable. You thought I'd never walk away." Clara's chest tightened. "Please, you don't understand. I only wanted peace." Ethan laughed, sharp and bitter. "Peace? You want peace? Then stay here and pray for it." He turned to leave, but she caught his sleeve. "Ethan, please! I'm 7 months pregnant. I need a doctor." He yanked his arm free. "Then find one among them," he said, pointing toward the shacks in the distance. "I'm sure charity will heal you." The words cut deeper than any blow. She stumbled back, slipping in the mud. Her knees hit the ground, pain shooting through her legs. The suitcase floated beside her, half open, the ultrasound photo sliding out and landing face up in the rain. "Ethan!" she cried. "You can't do this!" He paused by the driver's door, rain soaking his expensive coat. For a moment, he almost looked human. Then his expression hardened. "You were a mistake," he said quietly, "and that thing inside you is not my child." Clara froze. The thunder roared overhead, but she heard nothing except the echo of his voice. When she lifted her head again, the car was already turning, its headlights slicing through the curtain of rain. The sound of the engine faded, swallowed by the storm. Her breath came in short, shallow bursts. She pressed a hand against her stomach. "It's okay," she whispered to the life inside her. "It's okay, baby. Mommy's here." But her voice broke halfway through the sentence. A flash of lightning illuminated the alley. She saw figures huddled under plastic sheets, stray dogs running for cover, the outline of a distant sign that read Hope Shelter in faded blue letters. Her hands trembled as she reached for the suitcase. Inside, the clothes were soaked, the wedding photo cracked, the frame splintered. She touched the image, Ethan's smile frozen beside hers, and felt her chest twist with something colder than rain. From the corner of her eye, she noticed a small shadow. A boy, no older than 10, stood beneath a tin awning. He held a stack of newspapers against his chest, staring at her. His eyes were wide, frightened, curious. Clara tried to smile, but her lips trembled. "It's okay," she murmured, not sure if she was speaking to him or herself. The boy didn't move. A car passed in the distance, splashing water across the road. The thunder rolled again. When the light flickered from a nearby street lamp, she saw the boy still watching, silent as a ghost. Her body shivered uncontrollably. She tried to stand, but her legs gave out. The mud clung to her dress, pulling her down. Her breathing quickened. Panic spread through her chest. She pressed both hands against her belly, whispering to the baby as if words alone could keep them alive. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't know he could hate us this much." Another flash of lightning. For an instant, the world turned white, then black again. The rain came harder, drowning every sound except her heartbeat. She felt the child move, a faint flutter beneath her palm, fragile but real. She looked up at the sky. Water streamed down her face like tears. She no longer had the strength to cry. "Please," she said softly, "let someone help us." "Vey." The boy hesitated, then took a step forward. He set down his newspapers and pulled out a crumpled plastic sheet, holding it out toward her. His hands shook from the cold. Clara's throat tightened. She reached for it, her fingers brushing his for a second. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely a whisper. The boy didn't answer. He turned, running back under the awning as thunder cracked again. Clara pulled the plastic over her head, clutching it around her shoulders. Her body swayed with exhaustion. Around her, the slum was alive with shadows and rain. Somewhere far off, a church bell rang once, then fell silent. She closed her eyes, listening to the storm. Each raindrop hit the ground like a heartbeat. For the first time, she felt the weight of everything collapsing, her marriage, her name, her safety, until only the sound of the rain remained. Her lips parted, and she whispered to the dark, her voice trembling but steady enough to be heard by the night itself. Rain always tells the truth. Morning light struggled to break through the clouds, leaving the streets gray and slick from the storm. Clara sat against the wall of an abandoned shop, wrapped in the torn plastic the boy had given her. Her hair clung to her cheeks, her lips pale from cold. Beside her, the small suitcase lay half open, its contents damp and heavy with mud. She could hear the city waking around her, indifferent to her shivering body. From a broken window across the alley, a radio crackled to life. The voice of a newscaster cut through the static. "In today's headlines," he said, "business magnate Ethan Cross has announced a temporary leave from his position due to personal family matters. Sources claim his wife, Clara Cross, has fled their home and taken a substantial amount of company funds." The words hit her like a slap. Her breath caught. She pressed a hand to her stomach, her heart pounding harder than the baby's faint kicks beneath her palm. "Fled?" she whispered. "Stolen money?" Her voice vanished in the noise of the morning. A few passers-by slowed to look at her but kept walking. One of them, a woman selling fruit, muttered to a man beside her, "Look at her. Probably one of those women who think marrying rich solves everything." Clara lowered her head. Shame burned hotter than the fever rising in her body. She remembered Ethan's last words, "You were a mistake." The radio kept talking. Cross's public relations director, Vanessa Moore, issued a statement this morning saying Mrs. Cross has been struggling with emotional instability and might be undergoing treatment abroad. The company assures investors that operations remain stable. Vanessa's voice replaced the reporter's. Polished, confident, false. "Mr. Cross has always valued family above all. This has been a painful time for him, but we ask for privacy while he focuses on healing." Clara's eyes stung. "Healing?" she thought. "He left me in the mud." The radio faded out. Rain began again, softer this time, almost gentle. The boy from last night appeared at the corner with his bundle of newspapers wrapped in twine. He saw her still sitting there and walked closer, hesitant. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "you shouldn't stay here. People will take your things." Clara looked up. The boy's face was thin and sharp, eyes too old for his age. "What's your name?" she asked. "Leo." Leo," she repeated, as if memorizing it. "Do you know somewhere safe?" He nodded toward the end of the street. "There's a place near the church. They let people sleep there sometimes." She tried to stand but stumbled. Leo caught her arm with surprising strength. "Careful," he said. "It's not far." They walked slowly, her steps uneven on the wet ground. Every few feet, she felt eyes on her. A man smoking by a wall smirked and whispered something she couldn't hear. A group of women looked away, whispering behind their hands. The humiliation was a living thing that followed her down the road. At the corner, an old television played inside a cafe. Through the glass, she saw Ethan's face. He stood behind a podium, immaculate in his dark suit. Cameras flashed as he spoke. The sound was muffled, but the captions ran across the bottom of the screen. "My wife is unwell. I tried to help her. Please pray for her recovery." Clara froze. Her reflection stared back at her from the rain-streaked glass. Hair tangled, cheeks hollow, dress torn. A stranger. Leo tugged her sleeve. "Come on," he said. "Don't watch that." But she couldn't move. Each word on the screen carved deeper into her chest. People inside the cafe laughed and shook their heads. "Poor man," one said. "Imagine being betrayed like that." She turned away before they could see her face. The shelter was smaller than she imagined, a crumbling building with a faded sign that read Hope Clinic. The paint had peeled, and the doors creaked as Leo pushed them open. Inside, the air smelled of disinfectant and damp wood. A woman in a white uniform looked up from a desk. She was old, with gentle eyes and a silver cross around her neck. "Leo," she said, "you're late with the papers again." "Sorry, sister," he answered, "but she needs help." "One?" The woman's gaze softened when she saw Clara. "Come in, child," she said. "You're shaking." Clara hesitated at the threshold. "I don't have money," she murmured. The nun smiled. "We don't ask for money, only that you stay alive." Leo helped her to a wooden bench. She sank onto it, exhaustion flooding her body. The sound of the rain outside faded into a distant rhythm, steady and dull. The nun brought her a blanket and a cup of warm water. "Thank you," Clara whispered. Her voice barely rose above the creak of the walls. The nun studied her face for a moment. "You're not from here," she said. "No." "Then rest. God must have sent you here for a reason." Clara wanted to believe her, but the weight of shame pressed too heavily on her chest. In the corner, Leo stacked his newspapers near a heater and glanced at her, unsure if he should stay. "Leo," the nun said, "you can go now." He shook his head. "She shouldn't be alone." "Huh?" The nun gave a small nod, as if understanding something she couldn't explain. Clara stared at the rain running down the window pane. Each drop distorted the view of the outside world. Blurred colors, blurred faces, blurred truth. Somewhere beyond that glass, her husband's lies were turning her into a villain. Reporters were probably waiting for her face to appear, ready to feed the story that she was unstable, greedy, unfaithful. Her hands trembled. "They'll believe him," she said under her breath. The nun turned. "Who will?" "Everyone." Silence settled in the room. The only sound was the soft patter of rain. Clara felt the child stir again, a small reminder that life still existed inside her despite everything that had been taken away. Outside, a van drove by with a billboard mounted on its side. Ethan's face smiled from the poster, the words bold beneath it. Cross Enterprises, Building Hope. Leo looked toward the window, then back at her. "That's him, isn't it?" Clara closed her eyes. The air thickened with humiliation and disbelief. She had been erased, replaced by his lies. The nun placed a hand on her shoulder. "Rest now. Tomorrow we will think of what comes next." But Clara wasn't listening anymore. Her gaze was fixed on the reflection in the window, the image of Ethan's billboard glowing faintly in the distance. The rain blurred his smile until it disappeared completely. The room smelled faintly of alcohol and rain. The walls were cracked, the paint curling away in pale flakes. A single bulb hung from the ceiling, swaying slightly whenever the wind pushed through the broken window. Clara lay on a narrow metal bed, wrapped in a threadbare blanket. The sound of dripping water echoed through the small clinic, steady and patient. Sister Maria checked the thermometer and sighed softly. "Your fever is down a little," she said. "That's good." Clara nodded weakly. Her voice was gone from too many hours of crying. Her hair clung to her face in damp strands. She pressed her hand against her belly and whispered something the nun couldn't hear. Maria poured water into a chipped cup and placed it beside the bed. "Drink when you can," she said. "The storm did not spare anyone last night." Clara's lips moved. "How long have I been here?" 2 days. 2? Clara tried to sit, but her head spun. "I should go." Go where? The nun asked gently. Out there. They talk of you like a ghost. You are safe here. Clara lowered her eyes. Safe, she repeated quietly, as if the word no longer meant anything. Maria sat down beside her. Leo told me you were left in the rain. He said you tried to protect your baby. Clara swallowed hard. He shouldn't have seen that. He sees too much for a boy his age, Maria said. But God sends the right eyes when the world closes its own. Outside, the sound of children laughing drifted through the cracked door. They were playing in the courtyard, their bare feet slapping against the concrete. The noise was distant, like another world. Clara turned her head toward the sound. They sound happy, she said softly. They don't have much, Maria replied. But they share what they have. Sometimes that is enough. For a while, neither of them spoke. The rain started again, tapping against the glass. Maria rose to adjust the window, then paused. Would you like to listen? To what? Maria smiled faintly. To your child. She opened a small case and took out a worn stethoscope. The rubber tubing was old, the metal cold against Clara's skin. Maria placed the earpieces gently and moved the bell over her belly. Here, she said quietly. Listen. Clara leaned forward, her heart racing. Then she heard it, faint, rhythmic, fragile, a heartbeat within her own. Her eyes filled with tears. It's real, she whispered. Yes, Maria said. Life always answers, even when the world turns away. For a moment, the pain lifted. Clara felt something she hadn't felt in weeks, the certainty that she was still alive, that her child was still fighting. Maria smiled and removed the stethoscope. He or she is strong, Clara tried to smile back. Stronger than me, maybe. You will catch up, Maria said, standing. Rest. Leo will bring you soup soon. When the nun left, silence returned, thick and soft. Clara stared at the ceiling, watching shadows ripple across the plaster. Her body ached, but her mind was louder than the pain. She thought of the news reports, of Ethan's voice pretending to grieve. She could almost hear him now, calm and measured, rehearsed for the cameras. She turned to the small nightstand. Someone had left a folded towel there, a small loaf of bread, and a piece of paper with a hand-drawn cross. Leo's handwriting was crooked. For luck, it said. Clara traced the lines with her finger. A tear slipped down her cheek. She hadn't known kindness could still exist. The door creaked. Leo peeked in, carrying a tray that trembled slightly in his hands. Sister said you need to eat, he said. Thank you. He set the tray on her lap and looked around the room. Do you have family? Clara hesitated. Not anymore. Leo nodded as if he understood. I used to live with my mom here. She worked at this clinic before she got sick. Sister took care of her until He stopped and looked at the floor. I help out now. Clara reached for his hand. Your mother raised a good boy. He shrugged, embarrassed. Sister says people who stay help others because they remember being helped. Clara smiled faintly. She's right. He looked at her stomach. The baby's okay? Yes. Her hand moved instinctively to her belly. Thanks to you and Sister Maria. Leo grinned, shy but proud. Then maybe you'll both stay until the rain stops. When he left, Clara ate slowly, savoring the warmth. Every bite felt like proof that she could still go on. The faint hum of the storm outside began to blend with the rhythm of her own breathing. Later, when the lights dimmed, she stood and walked unsteadily to the window. The glass was streaked with water. Beyond it, the slums glimmered under 1,000 small reflections, wet rooftops, lanterns, puddles catching the last light of evening. She pressed her hand against the pane. Rain always tells the truth, she whispered. But what truth do I have left? Her reflection stared back, pale and thin. She hardly recognized herself, but somewhere beneath that broken outline, she saw the woman she used to be, her father's daughter, the one who had believed in goodness, in mercy, in justice. A faint noise came from the hall, and she turned. Sister Maria entered quietly with a small candle. You should rest, child. Tomorrow will come, whether we ask it to or not. Clara nodded. Thank you for keeping me here. Maria smiled. This place was built for those the world forgets, but sometimes the ones the world forgets are the ones sent to change it. Clara looked down at the candle's flame. It flickered like a fragile heartbeat. She thought of her child again, of the tiny rhythm she had heard through the stethoscope. Life, however small, was still life. She lay back on the bed, pulling the blanket close. The candlelight danced on the cracked wall, painting her shadow beside the cross Leo had drawn. Outside, thunder murmured somewhere far away. As sleep crept over her, she whispered one last promise to the child inside her. "We'll survive this. I don't know how, but we will." The light dimmed. The rain fell softly through the night. The morning sun crept through the cracked window, soft and gold, brushing across the metal bed where Clara slept. The fever had left her, but her face still looked fragile, the kind of exhaustion that no amount of sleep could cure. Outside, the courtyard echoed with children's laughter and the creak of wooden buckets being filled from the old pump. Sister Maria entered quietly with a tray of tea and bread. "You look better today," she said. Clara tried to smile. "Better is a small word, but yes. Leo has already gone to deliver papers," Maria continued. "He said he will stop by later." Clara nodded, taking the cup in both hands. The warmth traveled slowly through her fingers. "He's a good boy," she murmured. Maria looked at her for a moment, then asked, "Do you have any family left, child?" Clara hesitated. "I used to." She stared at the tea. "They're gone now. My father passed last year. My husband left." Maria didn't press further. "God works in strange ways," she said gently. "Sometimes he breaks the path to show us where it really leads." Clara didn't answer. Her thoughts drifted to her father's study, the smell of ink and oak, the way he used to say, "The world only respects truth when truth owns the paper." She finished her tea in silence. By noon, the air outside shimmered with heat. The sound of tires crunching over gravel startled the children. A dark car, too clean for this neighborhood, stopped near the gate. Its door opened, and a woman in a navy blue suit stepped out. Her hair was pinned neatly, her heels clicking on the broken pavement. Leo ran ahead of her, his face lit with excitement. "Sister Maria, she's the one I told you about!" The nun wiped her hands on her apron and stepped forward. "And who might you be, dear?" "Sarah Chen," the woman replied, offering a polite smile. "Director of Ward Legal Aid. I'm here checking on our outreach centers. This boy said there was a woman here who needed help." Maria turned to Leo, eyebrows raised. "You told her?" Leo nodded quickly. "She asked about the storm, and I said a lady came here, sick and pregnant. She said her husband's name was Ethan Cross." At that name, Sarah's expression shifted. The smile faded, replaced by something sharper. "Ethan Cross," she repeated slowly. "Did she tell you that herself?" "Yes, ma'am." "Where is she now?" "In the East Room," Maria said softly. "She's resting." Sarah's footsteps echoed down the narrow hall. She stopped by the open door and looked inside. Clara was sitting up in bed, brushing her hair with slow movements. The sunlight from the window fell across her face, revealing the bruises that time had not yet erased. She looked up as the door creaked. "Mrs. Cross," Sarah said quietly. Clara froze. "Who are you?" "I'm Sarah Chen. I worked with your father, Carter Cross. Do you remember me?" Clara blinked, confusion flickering through her eyes. "My father's lawyer?" "Yes. I handled the transfer of his estate before he passed." Sarah stepped closer. "I've been looking for you." Clara frowned. "Why?" "Because your name never disappeared from the records," Sarah said. She opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick folder, edges worn but carefully kept. "You still own 40% of Cross Enterprises. Your husband cannot sell, merge, or dissolve the company without your signature. Every transaction he's made since your disappearance is technically illegal." For a long moment, Clara said nothing. Her hand tightened on the blanket. "That can't be true. He told everyone I ran away. He made them believe I was gone." Sarah's voice softened. "He can't erase legal proof. Your father protected you. He left those shares in your name, not his." Clara's breath trembled. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I saw what the press did to you. The lies, the photographs. And because your father would never forgive me if I let his daughter be buried alive by gossip." Sarah placed the folder on the small table beside the bed. "You have more power than you realize." The words hung in the air. Power. The sound of it felt foreign in this place of broken walls and whispered prayers. Maria stepped closer, eyes wide. "Is this true?" Sarah nodded. "I checked the registry myself." Clara reached out, fingertips brushing the edge of the folder. Inside were copies of signatures, sealed documents, financial statements. Her father's handwriting appeared on the first page. "To my daughter Clara, who understands that mercy and justice must live in the same heart. Her throat tightened. "I thought he was only leaving me memories," she whispered. "He left you a future," Sarah said. Leo appeared at the door, wiping his hands on his shirt. "Miss Clara, is everything okay?" Clara looked up at him, her eyes suddenly bright. "Yes, Leo, everything might finally be okay." He grinned, not understanding but happy to see her smile. Sarah glanced at the boy, then back to Clara. "You can't stay here forever," she said. "Your husband will keep using your name as his shield, but if you want to fight, I can help you." Clara hesitated. "Fight?" The words sounded heavy, dangerous. "Fight with truth," Sarah said simply. "Your father built a company on honesty. He trusted me to defend it. Now I trust you to take it back." Clara looked out the window. The afternoon light glimmered on the wet rooftops. The city felt closer now, no longer a place she was exiled from, but a battlefield waiting quietly for her return. Maria placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "God does not open doors for no reason," she said. Clara took a deep breath. "If I sign these papers, what happens?" Sarah's tone was calm, professional. "You reclaim your authority. You become the deciding vote in every board decision. Ethan's empire stands on your name, and your name is still written in ink." Clara closed her eyes. Images flooded her mind. Ethan's face, the mud, the sound of the engine fading, the rain swallowing his lies. She opened them again, steady now. "Then it's time the truth owned the paper again." Sarah smiled, small but genuine. "Your father would be proud." "No." Outside, thunder murmured far away, soft and approving. Leo's laughter drifted through the hall. The smell of rain returned, faint and clean, as if the storm itself was listening. Clara lifted the folder onto her lap. The documents rustled beneath her fingers. For the first time since that night, her hands no longer trembled. She looked at Sister Maria and then at Sarah. "Tell me what to do next," she said. And the light through the window caught her face, not fragile now, but fierce, alive with the quiet fire of someone who had just remembered who she was. The night was quiet, except for the soft rhythm of rain tapping on the window. The small lamp on the desk threw a pool of warm light across the stack of documents Sarah had left behind. Clara sat at the table, her hair pulled back, her expression steady. The fear that once filled her eyes had been replaced by something sharper, clearer, purpose. She turned a page slowly. Every sheet carried the weight of years, her father's signatures, the company's transactions, and Ethan's false claims of authority. Lines of ink told the story of deceit dressed as progress. At the bottom of one form, a signature caught her attention. Ethan's handwriting, dated only a few weeks earlier. He had forged her name. Her hand trembled, not with fear, but with a surge of anger she had tried to bury. "He even signed for me," she whispered. From the corner, Sister Maria spoke softly. "Men like him believe no one will notice." Clara lifted her gaze. "Then it's time someone did." Maria nodded. "Sarah said she will come tomorrow with her assistant. They can help you file a case." "I'm not ready for courts," Clara said. "Not yet. He has friends in every office, and the press already hates me. I need to be careful." "Then what will you do?" Clara stared at the rain-slicked glass. Her reflection looked older than her years, stronger too. "I'll start with what he thinks doesn't exist, the truth." She spent the next hours reading. Every document, every receipt, every email printed by Sarah's team was a piece of the puzzle. She highlighted dates, cross-referenced signatures, and made notes on a yellow pad. The sound of rain became a metronome to her thoughts. Leo peeked in from the hall. "Still awake?" he asked. Clara smiled faintly. "Just a little longer." He pointed to the clock. "It's almost midnight." "Help." "I know," she said, "but sometimes midnight is when everything becomes clear." He grinned, uncertain but trusting, then closed the door. Clara returned to the papers. Each page revealed how Ethan had shifted funds through shell accounts, funneling charity money into private investments. The same company that built hospitals in her father's name had been selling fake construction contracts. Ethan had used her absence as his shield, the perfect alibi. She whispered to the empty room, "You thought I'd disappear forever." Her pen moved quickly across the paper, connecting lines and notes. It wasn't just revenge anymore. It was a map, a strategy. When dawn arrived, Sarah returned with her assistant, a young woman named Mira, who carried a laptop and 2 large folders. They spread everything on the table. "You've been busy," Sarah said, impressed. "I had a long night," Clara replied. "I found something. These offshore accounts. They match the donation numbers from my father's last foundation reports. Ethan moved everything after the funeral." Sarah's eyes narrowed. "That's enough to open an investigation, but you need to decide how public you want this to be. Once this starts, there's no hiding." Clara leaned back. "I've already been humiliated in public. Maybe it's time the truth stood in the same light." Mira typed quickly, scanning through the financial records. "If we can prove his transactions overlap with charity funds, we can freeze them. But we need someone inside the company who still respects you." Clara thought for a moment. "My father's former accountant, Mr. Lee, he left after Ethan took over. He might still have copies of the internal reports." Sarah nodded. "I'll reach out. And you, Clara, should rest a little. You look like you haven't closed your eyes in days." Clara smiled, weary but resolute. "Rest comes later." After Sarah left, Clara stood by the window again. The city shimmered under gray skies. The rain had slowed, falling in thin silver threads. In the distance, she could almost see the outline of Ethan's skyscraper, the empire he had built on deceit. She whispered, "Rain always tells the truth. One day, it will wash you clean of your lies." That evening, she took the train into the city for the first time since her exile. She wore a long coat and a scarf that hid her face. The stations smelled of oil and coffee, the rush of strangers brushing past her without recognition. She stepped out near the business district, where the towers of glass rose like monuments to arrogance. Her steps were slow but deliberate. Across the street, she saw Cross Enterprises, the name carved into black marble, her father's name hidden behind Ethan's. The sight twisted her stomach. She pulled her scarf tighter and walked on. She wasn't here to confront him yet. She was here to remember what had been taken. The guards didn't even glance at her. To them, she was invisible, a passerby, a shadow. She stopped near a cafe and sat by the window, watching employees come and go. She wrote notes in a small notebook, recording patterns of arrival, the faces of people she once knew. It was strange how easily the world moved without her. When the rain began again, she looked up. Drops traced slow paths down the glass, distorting the reflection of the building across the street. Her reflection merged with Ethan's empire. For a moment, it looked as if her face were carved into the glass beside his name. She whispered, "This isn't revenge, it's correction." Back at the clinic that night, she pinned the notes to the wall above her bed. Timelines, connections, names. The papers fluttered each time the wind pushed through the cracked window. She stepped back and studied them. Maria entered quietly, holding a candle. "You've turned this room into a war map," Clara smiled. "It feels that way." Maria looked at the pages. "And when the war is over, what then?" Clara met her eyes. "Then maybe I'll finally sleep." Maria placed the candle on the table and took her hands. "Just remember, justice and vengeance are not always the same road." "I know," Clara said softly, "but they lead to the same gate, the truth." Outside, thunder rumbled again, low and distant. The candle flickered, throwing shadows of her handwritten notes across the wall. Clara sat down, staring at the map she had made. In the center of it all, she had written a single word: truth. The rain returned, louder now, drumming on the roof as if urging her forward. She closed her eyes, breathing slowly, her resolve firm. "Tomorrow," she whispered to the storm, "the truth begins." The mansion glowed under the pale shimmer of crystal chandeliers. Music spilled from the open doors, a blend of laughter, glasses clinking, and the hum of expensive conversation. Outside, the rain fell softly, tracing silver lines across the marble driveway. The night had dressed itself in luxury. Inside, vanity sparkled louder than the orchestra. Vanessa Moore stood at the center of the ballroom. Her red satin gown caught the light like a flame. Diamonds glimmered at her throat, Clara's diamonds. The same necklace that had once rested against a heart that believed in love. Vanessa adjusted it with a smug smile and turned to the guests. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, raising her glass, "to new beginnings, to honesty, to freedom." The crowd cheered, the kind of cheer that belonged to those who had forgotten shame. Ethan Cross stood beside her, a polished figure in a tailored black suit. He looked tired, but triumphant, like a man who had conquered everything except sleep. He placed his arm around Vanessa's waist and leaned close. "You've outdone yourself," he said. "Only what you deserve," she purred. "A celebration of what's finally yours." Ethan's jaw tightened. "It was mine long before tonight." Vanessa laughed lightly. "Then let the world see it." She waved toward the photographers stationed near the staircase. Flashes burst across the room as cameras clicked, immortalizing the smiles, the gowns, the lies. A magazine editor whispered to her assistant, "Tomorrow's headline writes itself." Across the street, through the blur of rain, a black limousine idled under a dim street lamp. Inside, Clara watched from the shadows. Her face was calm, unreadable. The rhythmic swish of the wipers kept time with her heartbeat. Through the tinted glass, she saw Vanessa lift her glass again. "To Ethan Cross," Vanessa declared. "The man who gave me everything his past could not." The guests applauded. Ethan smiled tightly, though his eyes flickered toward the cameras, as if searching for something he couldn't name. Clara's fingers curled around the edge of her coat. Her reflection in the window looked ghost-like against the rain. She whispered, "You can keep my name for now, but not for long." Inside the ballroom, Vanessa moved from guest to guest, basking in attention. She laughed too loudly, her perfume trailing through the air like a declaration of victory. Near the piano, a group of executives congratulated Ethan on the upcoming merger. "The company's value will double," one of them said. "You've played your cards perfectly." Ethan forced a grin. "It's only the beginning." Vanessa slid beside him, resting a hand on his chest. "And we'll make sure the world knows who really runs Cross Enterprises now." "Lan?" The words carried just enough bite to draw a few curious glances. Ethan's smile faltered. "Careful," he murmured under his breath. "Oh, don't be shy," she said. "You've built an empire from the ashes. Surely you can handle a little fire." He laughed weakly, masking irritation with charm. But the tension between them flickered like a candle about to die. Outside, Clara shifted in her seat. She could see them clearly now, through the tall windows, framed in gold light. The sight was almost theatrical, the betrayer and his accomplice basking in their own performance. Her stomach tightened, not from pain, but from clarity. This was the arrogance that blinded them both. The driver looked at her through the mirror. "Ma'am, are we waiting much longer?" "Just a few minutes," Clara said softly. She watched as Vanessa stepped onto the grand staircase, tapping her glass again for silence. The music faded. All eyes turned toward her. "I want to thank everyone for standing by us," she began, her voice sweet and sharp. "There were those who doubted our intentions, who believed the lies of a woman too unstable to face the truth. But look around you. This is the real story. Love wins." A few guests chuckled. Others looked uncomfortable, but the applause came anyway. In that world, truth was just another accessory. Clara exhaled slowly. The words didn't hurt anymore. They confirmed everything she already knew, that arrogance was the easiest disguise for guilt. Vanessa continued, gesturing to the painting above the fireplace, a portrait of Ethan and Clara taken on their wedding day. The frame gleamed under the lights. Vanessa smiled coldly. "A bit of history," she said to the crowd, "proof that some things are better left in the past." She turned to Ethan. "Don't you agree?" He hesitated, eyes flicking to the portrait. For a moment, his practiced confidence wavered. Then he nodded. "Of course." Laughter rippled again. In the limousine, Clara's hand moved instinctively to her belly. She could feel the baby shift, a small reminder of the life that had survived everything. She whispered to the child, "This is what they call power, but it's built on air." A waiter stumbled near the staircase, spilling champagne on Vanessa's dress. She gasped, anger flashing across her perfect face. "Watch where you're going," she snapped. The man bowed apologetically, stammering. Ethan touched her arm. "Let it go." She shook him off. "No, these people need to know who they're serving." The room fell silent. For the first time that night, her mask cracked. Guests exchanged awkward glances. Ethan forced a laugh, but it sounded hollow. "It's fine," he said quickly. "Please, everyone, enjoy yourselves." Vanessa's voice dropped, low and venomous. "I built this night. Don't you dare tell me what's fine." Ethan's eyes hardened. "You built nothing. You're standing in someone else's shadow." The words slipped out before he could stop them. Vanessa froze. The silence stretched thin. Then she smiled again, brittle and polished. "Then I suppose I'll just have to burn the shadow." Laughter returned, nervous and thin. The orchestra began to play again, but the tension remained. Clara leaned back against the seat. The storm outside deepened, thunder rumbling far beyond the city. She watched as the guests pretended not to notice the cracks forming inside the golden walls. Vanessa raised her glass once more, her voice cutting through the music. "To new queens," she said, "and to the ghosts who tried to keep their crowns." The guests laughed again, oblivious. Clara's eyes softened. "Keep laughing," she whispered. "The truth is already walking through your door." A flash of lightning lit the mansion, washing everything in white for a heartbeat. When the light faded, the party continued, as if nothing had happened. But the rain outside grew heavier, pounding against the limousine roof like an impatient drum. Clara closed her eyes and listened. "Rain always tells the truth," she said quietly. The morning came with a pale sun and restless air. Television screens across the city glowed with the same announcement. Ethan Cross and Vanessa Moore stood side by side at a glossy conference table, microphones lined before them. Behind them hung a large banner that read, "New Horizons, the future of Cross Enterprises." Cameras flashed like a storm. "Today marks a new era," Ethan said, his voice calm, perfectly rehearsed. "After a long period of personal difficulty, I have chosen to move forward. With my fiancée, Vanessa Moore, by my side, Cross Enterprises will continue to uphold integrity and innovation." He smiled, practiced, and hollow. The crowd of journalists leaned forward, hungry for every word. Vanessa slipped her arm through his and raised her chin. "We thank everyone who believed in truth and in us," she said. "This company was built on transparency, and we will honor that legacy together." "You row!" Applause erupted. Cameras exploded in light. Inside the conference room, Ethan's assistant handed him a folder, a sleek black binder filled with contracts, endorsements, and one document on top that bore the title Mutual Dissolution and Transfer Agreement. "Just sign here," the assistant said. "It will finalize the separation and consolidate your new ownership." Ethan nodded, picking up the pen without hesitation. He barely glanced at the text. His hand moved swiftly across the page, his signature flowing with confidence born from years of deceit. Outside the building, a limousine waited at the curb. Inside, Clara sat in silence. She wore a light blue blouse, her posture calm, her eyes steady. Beside her, Sarah Chen watched the live broadcast on a tablet. "He's signing it now," Sarah said quietly. Clara's gaze didn't waver. "Good. Let him finish." The television camera zoomed in on Ethan's face as he capped the pen and shook hands with the board members. The room filled with applause again. "To the future," he said. Sarah looked at Clara. "You know what that means. The contract he just signed transfers all operational and financial authority back to you. It's over, legally speaking." Clara exhaled slowly. Not yet. The world still believes him. At the press conference, reporters shouted questions. "Mr. Cross, do you have any comment on the rumors that your former wife is still alive?" Ethan laughed smoothly. "People love stories. But my wife left long ago. I wish her peace, wherever she is." The words slid from his mouth like poison wrapped in silk. Vanessa pressed a hand to her heart and smiled for the cameras, a perfect image of compassion. In the limousine, Clara's fingers tightened around the edge of her coat. The rain began to fall again, tapping softly against the window. "Peace," she murmured. "He uses that word like a curse." Sarah closed the tablet. "He believes this was his victory speech." Clara turned to her. "Let him have his moment. He'll never know the silence that's coming for him." Meanwhile, inside the tower, Ethan's assistant collected the signed documents and left the room. Vanessa leaned toward him, eyes gleaming. "It feels good, doesn't it?" she whispered, to finally erase her. Ethan looked at her, his smile fading for just a second. "She erased herself," he said flatly. "I just closed the book." Vanessa ran a finger down his sleeve. "And opened ours." He didn't respond. For the first time that morning, he seemed distracted. The applause, the laughter, even Vanessa's perfume blurred into background noise. A strange unease crept up his spine. He brushed it away with arrogance, the only armor he knew. Across town, Clara and Sarah arrived at a small office lit by a single fluorescent bulb. Mira sat waiting with a laptop open, several files spread across the desk. "It's done," she said. The system recognized the signature. Ownership records now list Clara Cross as the sole controlling shareholder of Cross Enterprises. Sarah nodded. "Make sure the confirmation stays encrypted until the press release." Mira smiled. "Already done." Clara stood by the window, watching the city lights shimmer under the drizzle. "He'll find out soon enough." Sarah studied hair. "How do you feel?" Clara didn't answer right away. "It doesn't feel like revenge. It feels like gravity. Everything he built on lies is just falling back to earth." Mira looked up. "What about Vanessa?" Clara's eyes darkened slightly. "She'll fall with him." At that same moment, inside the company's penthouse suite, Vanessa clinked her glass against Ethan's. "To us," she said. He smirked. "To the end of ghosts." They drank, but when Ethan set his glass down, his phone buzzed with a notification. He glanced at the screen, his brow furrowing. "What the hell?" Vanessa frowned. "What is it?" He tapped the screen again. The corporate dashboard blinked, flashing an unfamiliar name across the header. "Primary ownership, Clara Cross." His throat went dry. "No," he muttered, "that's impossible." "What?" Vanessa demanded. He stood abruptly, the chair scraping across the marble floor. "Someone's tampered with the system." "Yes, sir." Vanessa grabbed the tablet from his hands. Her eyes widened as she read the same thing. "How could—" Ethan cut her off. "She's gone. She's nothing. She can't." He stopped mid-sentence. The realization hit him like thunder. "The contract," he whispered. "The one I signed today." Vanessa's face drained of color. "What about it?" He sank into the chair, the truth unraveling in his mind like a noose tightening. "It wasn't a merger form. It was hers." The room fell silent except for the faint hum of rain against the windows. Vanessa stared at him, disbelief turning into fury. "You signed everything to her?" Ethan buried his face in his hands. "No, I couldn't have." Vanessa threw her glass against the wall. The sound shattered across the room. "You idiot!" He looked up, his voice a whisper. "She played me." Across the city, in the quiet office where the women waited, the rain grew heavier. Sarah received a message on her phone, a simple confirmation code. She handed it to Clara. "It's official," Sarah said. "You own everything again." Clara read the message once, then closed her eyes. There was no smile, no triumph, only silence. Then the truth has signed its own name. Outside, the storm pressed against the windows, impatient, relentless. In another part of the city, Ethan stared into the dark, realizing the empire he thought he owned had vanished under his own pen. Vanessa's voice cut through the air. "What are you going to do now?" Ethan didn't answer. He simply turned toward the window, watching lightning split the sky in two. Somewhere beyond that storm, Clara stood under the same light, her eyes open, waiting. Morning broke beneath a pale sky streaked with gold. The city was already alive, though no one yet knew that by noon, its heart would shift. In the center of downtown, Cross Enterprises prepared for its biggest press conference of the year. Banners fluttered above the glass doors, cameras were stationed in rows, and reporters buzzed like a restless swarm waiting for spectacle. Inside, Ethan paced the marble floor. His jaw was tight, his suit immaculate, but his mind was chaos. Vanessa followed behind him, her red dress clinging like armor. "You have to say something," she urged. "The rumors are spreading. Someone leaked that her name is back on the registry." Ethan snapped. "It's a glitch. I'll fix it." But his voice wavered. For the first time, he didn't sound sure. Vanessa touched his arm. "If you look weak, they'll eat you alive. Smile, act confident, and by tonight this will all fade." Ethan nodded numbly. "Right, confidence. As the lights dimmed and the crowd settled, he walked toward the podium. Flashes erupted. The hum of microphones filled the air. "Good morning," he began. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice. There have been false reports circulating about company ownership. I assure you." The double doors at the back of the hall opened. A hush fell over the room. A woman stepped inside. She wore a pale blue suit that caught the light like dawn breaking through clouds. Her hair was neatly tied, her posture straight. In one hand, she held a single folder. The cameras swiveled toward her, snapping like gunfire. Ethan froze. His voice died mid-sentence. Clara walked calmly down the center aisle, the sound of her heels echoing against the marble. Every step silenced another whisper. Reporters turned, murmuring her name like a rumor reborn. She stopped at the front, only a few feet away from the podium. Her gaze met Ethan's, not angry, not vengeful, just steady. "Please," she said softly, "don't stop on my account." Vanessa stepped forward. "What are you doing here?" Clara turned her head slightly. "Attending a company event. After all, it's still my company." The crowd gasped. Someone from the back shouted, "Mrs. Cross, is that true?" Clara placed the folder on the podium beside Ethan. "You can confirm it yourself." He looked down. Inside were official papers, stamped and sealed, bearing his own signature, the very contract he had signed at his engagement announcement. His face drained of color. Clara's voice carried clearly through the hall. "For those wondering, my husband finalized a transfer of all corporate ownership 3 days ago. His pen made it official." Reporters erupted with questions. "Mrs. Cross, are you saying you now control Cross Enterprises? Was this part of a settlement? Where have you been?" Clara lifted a hand. "I'm not here for gossip. I'm here for truth." She turned to the crowd, her tone calm but unyielding. "My father built this company to heal, not to deceive. In the past year, its name was used to launder charity funds, to build vanity projects, and to silence those who asked questions. I have the records to prove it." Gasps rippled through the hall. Ethan stepped closer, his voice trembling. "You don't know what you're talking about." Clara met his eyes. "I know exactly what I'm talking about. I lived it." She opened the folder and pulled out a single sheet. "Here," she said, handing it to one of the journalists in the front row. "These are wire transfers from accounts connected to Cross Enterprises. Funds that were supposed to go to Hope Foundation, my father's charity, rerouted to private accounts under your name." The journalist looked at the sheet, his face turning pale. "This can't be forged," he whispered. Ethan's voice cracked. "You think anyone will believe you? You've been gone for months. You're unstable, you." Clara's calm broke only for a heartbeat. "I was silenced," she said, her voice cutting through the noise. "You tried to erase me. But truth doesn't drown in rain." Her words echoed across the hall. Cameras zoomed in. Reporters scribbled furiously. Vanessa stepped forward, desperate. "This is absurd. She's trying to destroy you because you left her." Clara turned toward her, her eyes clear as glass. "No, Vanessa, you destroyed yourselves when you believed no one was watching." Security moved closer, unsure whether to intervene. The atmosphere crackled. Ethan slammed his hand on the podium. "You can't do this. You're nothing without me." Clara took a slow step toward him. "Then why does every building here still bear my name?" The silence that followed was heavier than any shout. Even Vanessa looked away. Clara turned to the cameras again. "I don't want pity. I want accountability. This company belongs to the people who believed in my father's dream. To every employee, he taught that integrity is the only inheritance worth keeping. Today, that dream begins again, clean." Applause began hesitantly from the back of the room, then spread like fire. Ethan's breathing grew ragged. "You'll regret this," he hissed under his breath. "You don't know what it means to win." Clara looked at him, her voice soft but steady. "Winning means you can finally sleep without lies." She turned to leave, the cameras following her every move. Reporters called after her, questions overlapping, but she didn't stop. As she reached the exit, a journalist shouted, "Mrs. Cross, one more question. After all this, what will you do next?" Clara paused. Her hand rested on the door handle. The light from outside spilled across her face. She looked over her shoulder, and her voice carried like a whisper meant for the entire city. "Tell the truth. Always." She stepped out into the rain. The flashes from the cameras followed her through the glass doors, painting streaks of white light across the wet pavement. Outside, the limousine waited, engine purring softly. Sarah stood beside it, holding an umbrella. "You did it," Sarah said quietly. Clara shook her head. "No, the truth did." The rain fell harder now, drumming against the umbrella, blurring the city into silver haze. Clara tilted her face toward the sky for a brief moment, letting the water touch her skin. Inside the building behind her, chaos erupted, reporters shouting, Phones ringing, executives running for cover. But outside, in the storm, everything felt clean. Clara opened the car door, paused, and whispered to herself, "Rain always tells the truth." Then she stepped inside, and the door closed with a quiet finality that sounded like justice beginning. The sirens broke the silence of dawn. Red and blue lights flashed across the wet marble of the Cross estate. Federal agents swarmed the front gates, their voices sharp and steady through the loudspeakers. "Ethan Cross, this is the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Step outside with your hands visible." Inside the mansion, chaos bloomed. Ethan stood in the foyer wearing his robe, disbelief frozen on his face. Vanessa ran down the staircase, her hair tangled, clutching her phone. "What's happening?" she screamed. He stared at her. "They can't be here. There's no reason." The heavy sound of boots interrupted him. The doors burst open. Agents flooded the hall, their badges glinting under the chandelier's light. One of them spoke firmly, "Ethan Cross, you are under arrest for embezzlement, fraud, and obstruction of justice." Ethan stepped back. "You don't understand, I own this house." The agent's tone was unshaken. "Not anymore." "Oh!" Vanessa shouted as they placed the cuffs on Ethan's wrists. "He's innocent! This is a mistake!" Another agent turned toward her. "Vanessa Moore, you are also under arrest for conspiracy and aiding financial misconduct." She froze. The phone slipped from her hand, shattering on the marble floor. Cameras from outside flashed through the open doors as reporters captured every second. Ethan's eyes met hers briefly before they were led into separate cars. "I'll fix this," he muttered. But even he didn't believe it. By mid-morning, the world had already seen the footage. Headlines rolled across every network. Ethan Cross, arrested for charity fraud. Vanessa Moore, charged as accomplice. The empire that had once sparkled under wealth and lies now looked small, fragile, and drenched in rain. Hours later, the courthouse stood tall under a gray sky. Crowds gathered behind the barricades. Reporters held microphones high, their breath fogging in the cold air. The black vans pulled up to the steps, and the doors opened with a metallic click. Ethan stepped out first, wearing a gray prison uniform. His hands were cuffed, his expression hollow. Flashes erupted like lightning. He blinked against the light, the face that once smiled for magazines now tight with fear. Vanessa followed, her wrists bound, tears streaking through her makeup. She tried to lift her chin, but the weight of humiliation bent her posture. Inside the courtroom, silence fell as the judge entered. The wooden gavel struck once, echoing through the room. "Court is now in session." Clara sat quietly behind the prosecution table. She wore a modest black dress, her hands folded in her lap. Sarah Chen sat beside her, papers neatly arranged. The rain outside tapped faintly against the tall windows. The prosecutor began, "Your Honor, the defendants, Ethan Cross and Vanessa Moore, stand accused of large-scale embezzlement, corporate fraud, and defamation. The evidence before this court includes signed documents, wire transfers, and public records confirmed by multiple federal agencies." Ethan's lawyer rose, his voice sharp. "These allegations are exaggerated. My client was manipulated." The judge raised a hand. "Save your argument for your statement, counselor." 1. From the witness bench, the courtroom clerk called, "The prosecution calls Leo Hart." The small door opened, and Leo walked in, dressed in a clean shirt and tie that looked slightly too big for him. His eyes darted nervously toward Clara. She gave him a reassuring nod. The prosecutor smiled kindly. "Leo, can you tell the court what you saw the night of March 17th? Leo's hands trembled slightly as he held the microphone. "I was delivering papers near the old bridge. It was raining hard. I saw a car stop on the road, and a man pushed a woman out. She fell in the mud. Do you recognize that man in this courtroom today?" Leo swallowed. "Yes, sir, it's him." He pointed to Ethan. A low murmur rippled through the audience. Ethan's lawyer stood. "Objection. Irrelevant to the charges." The judge overruled. "The witness testimony establishes character. Proceed." Leo continued, his voice growing steadier. "She was pregnant. He threw her suitcase. I helped her find shelter that night. She was cold and scared, but she never said a bad word about him." Clara looked down, tears glimmering at the edge of her lashes. When Leo stepped down, the prosecutor turned to the judge. "Your Honor, The pattern is clear. This man abandoned his wife, falsified her signature, and used her father's legacy for personal gain. His partner in crime, Vanessa Moore, participated knowingly, exploiting media channels to cover his actions. You agree? The judge looked from Ethan to Vanessa. Do the defendants wish to make a statement before sentencing? Ethan stood slowly. I built everything. The company, the wealth, the name. None of it was hers. She only had it because of me. Clara met his eyes. Her voice was calm. You built nothing but ruin. The judge cleared his throat. Enough. He lifted the papers before him. This court finds both defendants guilty on all counts. The courtroom fell silent. For the crimes of embezzlement, fraud, perjury, and defamation, Ethan Cross is hereby sentenced to 30 years in federal prison. Gasps filled the room. Ethan's head dropped. The judge turned to Vanessa. For conspiracy and aiding fraud, Vanessa Moore is sentenced to 15 years, with eligibility for parole after 10. Vanessa broke down, her sobs echoing through the room. Ethan stared ahead, numb, as if the words had turned the air to stone. The gavel struck once more. Justice has been delivered. Reporters outside erupted into noise, but inside, silence settled like peace. Clara sat still, her breathing slow, her hands pressed gently against her stomach. She didn't smile. She didn't need to. Sarah leaned close. It's over. Clara shook her head softly. No, it's only finally right. As guards led Ethan and Vanessa away, their footsteps faded down the corridor. Leo turned once, looking at Clara. She smiled at him, a small, grateful smile that held all the words she couldn't say. Outside, the storm had ended. The sun broke through the clouds, spilling light through the courthouse windows. The gold rays fell across the wooden floor, glinting off the name Cross carved into the record of the case. Justice had taken its time, but it had arrived, clean, patient, unstoppable. Morning light poured through the tall windows of the restored mansion, filling every corner with warmth. The same marble floors that had once echoed with cruelty now gleamed beneath the soft footsteps of a different life. The air smelled of fresh flowers and rain-soaked earth drifting from the open garden doors. Clara stood at the edge of the grand staircase, holding her daughter in her arms. The child's small fingers clutched the edge of her mother's blue dress, the same pale color that had carried her through every storm. Outside, the garden shimmered with dew, workers trimmed the hedges, and the fountain that had been silent for years now sang again. The estate no longer belonged to greed, it belonged to peace. "Good morning, Mrs. Cross," said one of the housekeepers, smiling softly. Clara nodded. "Please, call me Clara. The house is free of titles now." The woman smiled wider. "Yes, ma'am, Clara." The sound of laughter came from the doorway. Leo stepped inside, dressed neatly in a suit and holding a folder. He looked older, taller somehow, but the spark in his eyes was the same. "You're early," Clara said, surprised but pleased. "I promised Sister Maria I wouldn't be late on my first day," he said, his grin shy. "Besides, this place looks different in daylight." "It should," Clara replied. "It finally has light again." "Leh." He handed her the folder. "These are the final documents from the foundation. The government approved the new Hope Clinic branch downtown. They said you can start building next month." Clara's eyes softened. "Hope lives again." She reached out, resting her hand on his shoulder. "You've done more than anyone else to make that happen." He shook his head. "You did." "No," she said gently. "You found me when the world forgot I existed. Don't ever underestimate what that means." "One?" Leo's smile faltered, his voice catching. "Sister Maria said that day in the rain changed everything." "It did," Clara whispered. "Rain always tells the truth." He nodded, understanding without needing more words. The sound of small footsteps interrupted them. The little girl in Clara's arms reached toward Leo, babbling happily. "She likes you," Clara said. "I like her too," Leo answered. "She looks like you," Clara smiled. "She has her grandfather's eyes." She turned toward the sunlight streaming through the window. "He'd have loved to see this." They stepped outside into the garden. The air was cool, carrying the scent of jasmine and wet soil. The trees that had once stood bare were now green again. Clara walked to the center path, where the fountain's spray caught the morning light in silver arcs. Sarah Chen arrived through the gate, waving as she crossed the lawn. "You're impossible to surprise, you know that." Clara laughed. "You always find me." Sarah handed her a small envelope. "The final court confirmation. The restitution funds have been transferred. Every stolen dollar will go back to the foundation and the charity programs your father started." Clara took the envelope but didn't open it. "Thank you, Sarah, for everything." "You don't need to thank me," Sarah said. "This was always yours. I just helped you reclaim it." They stood in silence for a moment, listening to the fountain. The sound of water mingled with the faint chirping of birds returning to the trees. Sarah looked at the child in Clara's arms. "And how's our little miracle today?" "She's learning new words," Clara said. "Mostly nonsense, but I think she said light this morning." Sarah smiled. "Light suits her." Clara's gaze wandered toward the 5th step of the staircase, still visible from where they stood. It was the same place she had once fallen, the same place where everything had broken. Now, she had placed a small bouquet of blue flowers there, forget-me-nots. Their petals shimmered in the sunlight. Leo noticed her looking. "You kept the flowers there?" She nodded. "It's where I lost everything and began again. Some places deserve to remember." A breeze moved through the garden, gentle and warm. For a long moment, none of them spoke. The world itself seemed to pause in quiet gratitude. Then, from somewhere nearby, church bells began to ring. Slow, clear, and bright. Clara closed her eyes and listened. Each note felt like an answer to every prayer whispered into the rain. Sarah placed a hand on her shoulder. "You can finally rest now." Clara opened her eyes. Rest comes when justice becomes peace. Today feels close enough. They walked back toward the house. The mansion's white walls glowed in the sunlight, its windows open wide. Through one of them, the faint melody of a piano drifted. Someone in the staff playing an old tune. Clara stopped for a moment, her daughter laughing softly in her arms. "She'll grow up knowing the truth," Clara said. "Not the pain, not the lies, just the truth." Sarah smiled. "Then she'll be her mother's daughter." As they stepped inside, Leo lingered for a moment near the doorway, looking out at the horizon. The sky was clear now, washed clean by the night's rain. In the driveway, the old black limousine waited, polished and still. It no longer symbolized escape or revenge. It was just a car, ready for wherever life would take them next. He turned back to see Clara sitting by the window, her baby playing with a piece of blue ribbon. Sunlight spilled over both of them, turning the room golden. Clara whispered softly to the child, her voice tender, almost like a prayer. "Do you hear it, Grace? The world is quiet now. The storm is over." The little girl laughed, a sound pure enough to fill the entire house. Clara smiled, pressing a kiss to her daughter's forehead. "Remember, my love," she whispered. "Rain always tells the truth." Outside, the last drops from the roof fell into the garden soil. The fountain sparkled, and the wind carried the scent of new beginnings through the open doors. The house that had once been built on deceit now breathed with peace, its silence filled not with sorrow but with life. And for the first time in years, Clara looked toward the sky and felt completely free.